ULEZ. Unless you've been living on the moon for the past few months, you'll know what that is. Today, we're asking if a classic car can help you beat ULEZ. I'm fortunate enough to own a classic car. I love my classic car. If you want to know more about my car, click on the pop-up icon and there's a whole video about that. I'm also really unfortunate to own an old diesel car, a diesel car that attracts ULEZ charges and clean air charges. Today, we're going to have 10 rounds where these two are going to duke it out over certain categories to see if we think owning a classic car is a decision that you could make to help you beat ULEZ. Before we get into the video today, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all the people who've watched my videos. I've been doing this for 3 weeks. Posted 3 videos and some shorts. So I've now got 140 odd subscribers and amassed over 5,000 views. So I'm absolutely amazed that that's occurred. Really enjoying it. It's something I'm growing and hoping to explore. So thank you. If you want to see more, like, subscribe, share. Thank you. So what is ULEZ? ULEZ is the ultra low emission zone in London. It was introduced by Boris Johnson, finally put in place in September 2020, and it's recently been extended by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, in August 23. It's really political, topical, and quite emotive, and there's a lot of people impacted by it. I think many people are looking at how they personally can deal with it, and part of that is managing their financial commitments, because right now there's not a lot of money sloshing around. So I think everyone understands the drive for the introduction of ULEZ and the overarching reduction of pollutants, but it does have a massive impact on some people, particularly those people who are having to work in that area and drive older cars on a daily basis, because they can't just change out, and that might be you. But it's also in different cities in the UK, so they're called different things. I think they're generally called clean air zones. There's one in Birmingham, just down the road from me, and there's one in Bristol. So there's 3 in England, and then there's 4 in Scotland. So you've got Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Dundee. And they all operate in a similar way, where if you take a higher polluting vehicle into those areas, then you have to pay a charge. If you don't pay the charge, then you'll expect a fine. So many people are changing out their cars, swapping to cleaner cars, or using alternative modes of transport. So ULEZ uses the European emission standards to provide the limits on pollutants. Petrol cars and diesel cars operate to a different Euro standard. So the Euro standard was introduced in 1970, Euro 1, to start tackling pollutions across Europe. But in terms of ULEZ today, a diesel car has to comply to Euro 6, which was introduced in 2016, and a petrol car has to comply to Euro 4, which was introduced in 2006. So between 2006 and 2004, the main changes have been the harmful pollutants to the people on the street. So carbon monoxide, NOx, and things like particulate matter. So in 2016, when Euro 6 came out, diesel cars from that point on are predominantly fitted with diesel particulate filters to help them remove those harmful pollutants to meet the standard. Generally, petrol cars, in terms of harmful pollutants, are cleaner anyway than diesels. So there's not been a significant challenge in the petrol car area. So if you're in a petrol car from 2006, then you're likely to be okay against ULEZ. A lot of the impact here is against diesels. So my Mercedes B180 CDI, dirty diesel, really is a dirty car in terms of pollutants, harmful pollutants. It's a car we're going to be getting rid of soon, and we're going through the process for designing what to get next, but obviously looking at things like electric. So this is a 2008 car, so way before 2016, when the requirements were tightened in Euro 6. This is built at the time of Euro 2. So the pollutants from this car, I've just grabbed my notebook because this is quite complicated. So Euro 2 diesel, carbon monoxide limit was 1 gram per kilometre. Now at Euro 6, it's 0.5 grams per kilometre. So that's halved, and it halved in Euro 4 as well. NOx and particulate matter, Euro 2 to Euro 6, is between 90 and 95% reduction. So you can see the target here, what they're trying to reduce. They're trying to reduce significantly those harmful pollutants that impact the man on the street, the local effects. Generally, in terms of carbon dioxide, which affects the atmosphere and greenhouse gases and the like, and global warming, Euro standards haven't really targeted that until Euro 6, where they have introduced a limit, and that limit applies to manufacturers, where they have to, across their range of cars, be below 98 grams per kilometre of carbon dioxide. If they don't hit that across all their cars on average, then they get a big fine. I think all of this stuff, in terms of the complexity and the numbers and the changes and the stringent nature of these changes, really does give you an indicator of the difficulties of manufacturers achieving that, and some insight into what happened in the scandal recently with the manufacturing company falsifying their emission testing. Right, so let's get this competition started. Round 1, ULEZ. So as I've pointed out, this is an old diesel car, a dirty diesel car. Euro 2, certainly not Euro 6 compliant, and definitely invites ULEZ charges, as it would clean air zone charges across the UK. So this example, £12.50 a day. A lot of money, particularly if you're using it in the capital every day. It's going to add up quite quickly. The MG, it's an historic vehicle, therefore it's ULEZ exempt. Brilliant. First round goes to the MG. Round 2, purchase cost. How much does it cost to buy one of these cars? Not that you're necessarily going to buy this car, but we're just trying to compare here. So I bought this car at the start of the year, and I bought it as a stopgap, as I said, while we get something more permanent. That's taken a little while longer than I'd hoped, but when I bought the car, it cost me £1,700. I bought it thinking I'd keep it a few months, sell it for around the same price. ULEZ has come along. That might be more tricky now, but it is what it is. So this car cost me £1,700. The MG, I've had it 20 years. When I bought it, it cost me £3,000. It's worth slightly more than that now. The market for MGs hasn't really changed a great deal, if I'm honest. It's gone up slightly. I think you could get an example similar to that, probably around £4,000, maybe £5,000, one that's roadworthy and usable on a daily basis to beat ULEZ. So you're probably talking maybe £2,000–3,000 more of the two in terms of the money you need into a classic. So round 2, in terms of purchase cost, goes to the Mercedes. Round 3, insurance. Car insurance is a wildly difficult thing to estimate, but for me, I pay just over £100 a year to insure my MG. Lives in the garage, that's probably one of the requirements, but it's £100 a year. It's been there or thereabouts ever since I've owned it, really, so it's cheaper to own a classic car in terms of insurance. For the Mercedes, for me and my wife to drive it, we pay just over £300 a year. So in terms of insurance, the MG wins. Round 4, road tax. So in the UK, we pay road tax to put our cars on the road, and that is generally related to its emissions. So the cleaner the car, the lower the tax. Electric car, in a lot of cases, zero tax. MG used to be quite high on tax until it got to over 40 years old, and since then it's been tax exempt. So I pay zero on my car now in terms of road tax, which is fantastic. The Mercedes, not so great. It cost me £231 a year to tax this car. Round 4 goes to the MG. Round 5, MOT and maintenance. If, like me, you own a classic car already, you're going to maintain it really well. I spend a lot of time working on my car. It's normally running really well, although being a classic car, there's always something to go wrong. The way I look at this is maintenance on an MG is a constant thing. You need to keep on top of it. It's not too expensive. The parts are cheap. So it's a case of little and often to keep it going and keep it in good shape. If you do that, you're going to get a good car out of it. The flip side on the Mercedes is I don't do much maintenance on the Mercedes. It's an old smoker. It's pretty much bomb-proof. It keeps going. You've obviously got the wear and tear and the consumables to sort out, but that's the same on both cars. The thing about a car like the Mercedes, if something goes wrong, it's likely to cost you more. So less likely to go wrong but cost more likely to go wrong but cost less. So in terms of maintenance, I think these are pretty even if you look at it in that way. Now, MOT-wise, the Mercedes needs an MOT. That finds faults, makes sure it's a safe car. I think that's a good thing. The MG, because it's, again, an historic car, doesn't need an MOT. So there's a saving there. One of the things about not needing an MOT is responsibility for safety falls on the owner in entirety, not serviced by a garage on a 12-monthly period. Now, some may say that's too wide to spot anything anyway, but at least it's an indicator and picks things up before it's too late. So the Mercedes is done MOT, MG is not, but they're both kept safe in different ways. Round 5 is a draw. Round 6, fuel economy. Right, I've had to get my book because there's some figures in here. So the MG obviously isn't as economical as the Mercedes. Diesel is generally going to be more economical than a petrol car anyway. It's not a new diesel, granted, but it's still more economical. For the Mercedes, I kind of get 44 miles to the gallon out of it. For the MG, depending on how it's running, if it's running well and it's tuned how I like it, and it gives you the performance I need, I get 20 miles to the gallon out of it. If it starts to go off the tune and isn't running well, I can get less than that. If I get stuck in a lot of traffic, it has an effect. So in terms of fuel economy, miles per gallon, this gets about half of the Mercedes. I also have to put super unleaded in this car, so it probably costs equivalent in terms of the fuel going in, but I get a lot less out of this one. So what are the figures? Per mile, the MG cost me 35 pence in fuel. Per mile in the Mercedes cost me 16 pence in fuel. So fuel economy, round 6, Mercedes wins it. Round 7, safety. Even though the Mercedes is 15 years old, it's still got numerous safety features. Rated quite high in crash testing. And some of the reasons for that is it's got airbags, it's got anti-lock braking, it's got side curtain airbags that help passengers. So in terms of a car, even though it's a small car, it's quite a safe car. The MG in comparison has got none of that. It's got brakes that hardly work. It's rear wheel drive. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can find yourself in an awful mess, particularly in the wet. If you want to see more on what might happen in that case, check out my earlier video. I'll pop the link up for you. It's got no airbags, so if you want to take your face out on the steering wheel, it will happily oblige. So you have to treat this car with respect. It's not going to save you, you have to save yourself in it. So if you find yourself on big, busy roads with big vehicles surrounding you, you've got to treat this car with respect and really watch out for what you're doing. So round 7, safety, Mercedes wins it. Round 8, reliability. So even though I maintain the MG a lot, and I spend a lot of time fettling it and making sure it's running really well, this car is still not as reliable as the Mercedes. As I said earlier, the Mercedes is just going to run and run and run. As long as you take care of the basics, it'll run forever and be really reliable. The MG, because it's got a lot more older components, older designer components, the things are more susceptible to failure, particularly in things like rain and the cold temperatures, then the MG is not as reliable as the Mercedes. Round 8, Mercedes wins. Round 9, convenience. So if, like me, you've got a family and you've got a lot of things to deal with, then having a car like the Mercedes with its fold down seats and its hatchback is really convenient. You can get the kids in it, you can get loads of junk in it, you can go to the tip in it, you can move things around in it. It's really easy. You jump in, you get in, you go. The MG, you kind of got to plan what's going on. I need to think about getting this car out of the garage in the morning, what part's in the way of it, can only fit me in it, can't take 2 children in it. My wife never goes in it because she doesn't like it. So in terms of convenience, the Mercedes wins it. So round 9, Mercedes wins. So round 10, we've come full circle. Round 10 is environmental. We started off with ULEZ, but that was about the limits, about whether you needed to pay the ULEZ charge or not. This section is about, of these 2 cars, which one do we think is most environmentally friendly? So in terms of carbon dioxide, and greenhouse gases and pollution and global warming, then you can estimate per mile based on the type of fuel it uses. So obviously I can't get the detail for the MG, probably could for the Mercedes. For the purpose of this exercise, all I've done is just estimated the diesel miles per gallon, petrol miles per gallon, and converted that into CO2 grams per mile. So for the diesel, grams per mile produces 272 grams of CO2 per mile. The MG, we talked about fuel economy earlier. We said that there's about a factor of 2 difference in terms of fuel economy. There's also some factors in there in terms of the fuel type. So for the MG, it's 544 grams per mile. So, and it literally is twice as more carbon dioxide emitted from the MG per mile than the Mercedes. So in terms of environmental, for global warming, the Mercedes is better. In terms of NOx, CO2, hydrocarbons and particulate, then generally a petrol should be cleaner than a diesel, particularly this old diesel that's got no DPF. It's a Euro 2 vehicle, very polluting in that regard. But again, in terms of that detail, I'm not entirely sure, because this one consumes so much petrol that while the limits are quite low for petrol, because it uses twice as much, does it push it back up? So I don't really know. I think they may be getting on for being similar in this case, but maybe not. So I think this one, and primarily because in terms of global warming, the MG uses a lot more CO2, going to have to give this one to the Mercedes. Round 10, Mercedes wins. That's it, 10 rounds, all done. We've battled, we've done ULEZ, purchase, insurance, tax, MOT and maintenance, fuel economy, safety, reliability, convenience and environmental. I'm just going to total up now to see where we get. So for the first 6 rounds, when we were focusing on things like the impact on your pocket, the money, pence per mile, the fuel economy, tax, insurance, the first 6 rounds, the MG took it 4 rounds to 2. MG was well out in front. For the last 4 rounds, talking about safety, reliability, convenience, environmental, I've had to give those to the Mercedes. So overall, of the 10 rounds, it's gone 6-4 to the Mercedes. So on paper, the Mercedes seems to be the right car to beat ULEZ, but there's more to it than that. What I've done in going through all this is I've pulled together a chart which looks at the distance travel into the ULEZ zone. So if you use your car daily, how far do you travel into the ULEZ zone? Obviously, that links into fuel economy, how much fuel you use. So of the two, the MG would use more fuel. And if you're in the ULEZ zone and you're going into the ULEZ zone, and how many times you do that a week means you're going to attract a charge on a daily basis. So if you go 1-2 times a week, the charges in terms of ULEZ is going to be lower. If you go 5 times a week, it's going to be higher. If you live in the ULEZ zone and you're using your car 7 days a week, it's going to be really high. But if you live in the ULEZ zone, you're using less miles, then it's going to offset. So I've pulled a little chart together. I'm going to show you this now and we'll talk through it together. Right, so we're really ramping up the excitement now with our chart. MG versus Mercedes, cost per week, and includes fixed items such as insurance and tax and purchase of the vehicle. I've got trips per week along the x-axis at the bottom, and I've got cost on the y-axis. The only line I've got on the moment is the Mercedes 1 mile trip per day. For 1 trip per week, 1 mile, the cost is dominated by fixed items and the single ULEZ charge. At 7 days per week, we're nearing on £100, predominantly dominated by ULEZ. Just dropping on the MG line, cost remains pretty flat. It's not actually flat because you're accumulating some fuel costs, but the fuel costs are so negligible, it's pretty flat. The MG in this case is a lot more cost efficient. The red line is the Mercedes 100-mile round trip. So what's happening here is you've got your ULEZ charge again. So it's just growing as you go to the right because you're using more fuel. Dropping the MG line on the dotted red line, you can see it's jumped up. So what we're seeing here is a domination of fuel consumption. So the MG envelopes the Mercedes at the bottom by not counting ULEZ, and at the top by accumulating significant fuel consumption. Right in the middle of these trips is a 50-mile trip, and you can see that the lines pretty much overlay. You're splitting the difference here between fuel consumption and ULEZ charge. So that's it. We're done. We've compared the smoky, dirty diesel to the classic to figure out if using the classic can beat ULEZ. The answer? I'm not sure. We saw that round for round, the Mercedes just won out. And then we did some analyticals. We looked at distance travelled, we looked at times per week, and we tried to figure out what's best in each case. So I think the answer is horses for courses. If you live in the city, if you can maintain a classic, if you can look after a classic, I think low mileage and the fact it doesn't hit you with ULEZ every day is a really good thing. But it's going to be a challenge over the winter, not inconvenient and not as safe. If you live out of the city, you've got more travel to do, you want something more economical, then an older car, even though you're getting hit with ULEZ, may be the preferred option. It's going to be safer, it's going to be more convenient, it's probably going to cost you less, it's going to balance out the cost of ULEZ in terms of you having to travel into the city. I hope you've enjoyed the video today. If you have, please click like. If you want to subscribe, that's brilliant. I hope you enjoy my content. I hope to see you soon. In the next video, I'm going to be doing a power run, taking the MG to a rolling road to give us a baseline before we start tinkering around and doing some supercharger modifications. And I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction to the kit I've got as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Really going to get on the road with a supercharger. But for now, that's it.